The next panel that's coming up, the moderator is the chairperson of Marketing and Membership Committee at the TBCSA and the chairperson of Collaborative Fund Committee at the TBCSA. Ms. Lindelwa will be chairing. And we do have on that panel, you can come up, Mr. David Frost. We also have the acting CEO of South African Tourism. And this is the panel that's going to give a report back on the structured engagement. And we had last year a discussion here on stage about how we're going to work together and also how we're going to do that. So this is another feedback session that will deal with that. I will sit in at that feedback session as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for introducing the panel. David, I am going to start with you. Last year, we started talking, and we started identifying things that we need to do together with SA Tourism. And I must say that there has been quite a lot of not only political will, but the willingness for us to work together as an industry, which is quite heartening, and also one of the things that we need as Destination South Africa. I know everyone has spoken about working together. We can't do this alone. For you, why is it important that we do this together as a team?
Thank you, Lindy. Look, I think why it's important is we have scarce resources when it comes to marketing South Africa. And I think we need to be cognizant of that. And I think what has happened historically, to be frank and fair, is that SAT has a budget and they develop game plans and they execute those. And they do a really good job. They have really competent people. And over the years, we've seen the benefit of that. But the private sector is often not appraised of these plans ahead of time. And in the private sector setting, when you're running companies, what you want to know is, what does the next 18 months to 2 years look like? Private sector budgets, but the private sector also spends money on marketing. And we have a lot of private sector resources that spend a lot of time in source markets, marketing, and indeed doing the very important job of sales. But because these weren't aligned, what tends to happen is that the private sector guys tend to plow very lonely furrows. Mm-hmm. And this model has served us okay. I mean, we got to 2.6 million arrivals pre-COVID. But when we get back to what the Aussies do and the fact that they outperform us almost 2.5 to 1 with poorer product, but the reason they do it is because they work together at inception and then they execute together. So it was really important for us to put into place a framework and a structured framework where we can bring the private sector and SAT together, harness the intellect, the thought leadership, the experience that we've got in the private sector, bring it together with the great team that we've got at SAT. And the idea really is, this is not about like a clean slate and everything. The idea is we start with SAT. They have a budget, they have game plans, they have good teams in place. So it's about engaging SAT sharing their plans with the private sector, and through a process of discussion and debate. And bearing in mind, this is going to be ongoing. The idea is to refine those plans and then communicate that more widely so that we can align the private sector all behind one game plan. And although we've used the term structured engagement in the process, which we'll hopefully unpack for you this morning, because there's been amazing progress. That whole terminology, and language is important, has been changed. So it's not the structured engagement, it's not SAT, TBCSA, it's Team South Africa, UK, Team South Africa Adventure Tourism. So the mantra is Team South Africa, one team, and hopefully many goals.
Thanks, David. Sonto, how have you found the engagement? He seems to be very excited about it. I'd like to hear your view.
Thank you so much, and Dumelang today. In May this year, I just want to remind the meeting, in May this year, there was a marriage. Do you remember? So I'll let the CEO speak more about the marriage, but there was a marriage that needed to be taken to the next level. But I just want to maybe take it a step back a bit and talk about my own personal experience. I come from a classical marketing environment, and I'll explain what that means for me. When I worked in soap and soup before, in Unilever, we had a brand, and you have a brand that you are marketing because we're in the marketing unit, but we also own the factory as Unilever. So if I talk about the Omo, which is the brand that I worked on, I talk about the quality of the brand and the product. I can also go to the factory and fight with the production team to say the quality you are giving me is not in line with the brand proposition. So I have the whole control of that value chain, you know, from creating a brand proposition to making sure that the product delivers to my proposition. I mean, I had endless days at Unilever tasting the Rama margarine. I mean, can you imagine? You wake up in the morning, you go to the factory, you taste the margarine to make sure that the taste proposition talks to what you have promised the consumers. Now we have a peculiar situation in tourism because South African tourism, charged with the marketing of the destination, owns nothing. We don't own anything. We love the hotels, we go to hotels, we wish they would be part of the proposition and the products out there, but we don't own them. So what David is talking about is very, very critical because the engagements is actually trying to close the gap between what SA Tourism does and what the products do, so that it can come together in a seamless way, create that long runway from a marketing point of view, so that you are able to know what are you going to market, when are you going to market, based on what are the consumer needs, what are the markets saying, and create that marketing, seamless sort of marketing approach. So I'm very grateful the fact that, you know, in the recent times, at least from last year, there's been this sense of urgency in creating this marriage and making sure that there is a very clear way of working between the industry and SA Tourism, and recognizing the fact that we are actually together. We have to work together. There is no other way, because BMW doesn't just make a car and then they don't know how it's marketed. It's the one thing. And in our situation, because it's not the one thing, the structured engagements then provide a perfect platform for us to be able to bring our plans together and be able to then move forward in unison in driving the marketing of our destination.
Thank you. Thanks, Sonto. Chief, Sonto has alluded to some of the challenges of having to market something that you don't really own, something that you have no control over, but you have to take it and sell it. What have we done as an industry to ensure that we provide that intel and support to SA Tourism to do the work that they need to do?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So what we have done is we put together teams from the private sector and teams from SAT to be able to sit together and discuss various issues and various markets. So those teams have, you know, of course from our side, as a private sector, we'll have a lead for that team, and there will also be a lead from SA Tourism side, and David will speak more to the details of that. Now, we have various teams. We have a team that deals with each market, So from the inbound point of view, we've got a team that will deal with either it's the US market or
Should I put this up? Not going up.
So we're just going to the slides. But while David does that, we have the teams that looks after
Need help?
various markets. We know that our key source markets are your UK and Ireland. We know that Germany is a key source market. We know the North America being US and Canada key market. We also know that China is a key market, and we've had discussions around that. We are still due to have discussion on India, but we've also had discussions around Africa as a market. So there are teams that are dealing with each market. And the purpose, as you know, the panelists have said, is to make sure that we have the meeting of minds. It doesn't help us when we go out to market that the private sector is speaking one thing, the public sector is speaking another. So it's to merge the conversation or the marketing message that we have when we go out there. So those teams have met. We also have a team that deals with Ndlovu and Meetings Africa and the whole conferencing space led by Glenton. We also have a team that deals with domestic in terms of leisure travel and government and others, led by Otto. And I know you are there as well on that team. So there are various teams that are meeting, that are discussing. The ultimate goal for this discussion is to ensure that we all understand what we need to do and we all are singing from the same hymn sheet. Because if we do that, we will win in a far greater way than what we do now. So that alignment is important, and hence putting together these teams to be able to discuss each source markets. Of course, these are not big teams. And I'm sure there are other team leads that are here that may give some feedback. They are small teams. They discuss, they engage, and of course, as the time goes, when we finalize the engagements, we'll be able to bring those engagements out for further consultation with everyone else. But it's to build a strategy for a market, to build a communication for a market, to build an approach to the market, and to make sure that we're not all crisscrossing each other. And as we go, we'll also deal with issues around provinces. Because we don't want a situation where a province is going that way, national is going that way. And then after that, we'll deal with other government institutions that impacts on our work or that are complementary to our work. Because we still have the likes of Invest SA and so forth and so on. We have to be able to work together. There's no point in getting Invest SA or Brand SA is there, is doing one thing. When they leave, we go in, we do another thing, different messaging and so forth and so on. So it will grow into that space. But for now, we're dealing with our own house issues, cleaning it up, make sure that we're all aligned, and there are teams in place that are dealing with that.
Thank you. Thank you for that context. I think it is quite important for people to understand that before you even go to market, you need to agree on what it is that you're going to market, right? David, can you tell me about some of the achievements, because you've been in a lot of these work streams, some of the milestones that we have managed to achieve?
Thanks, Lindy. So, look, we've put up, this is, we had to start somewhere. So, we can't do everything at once. Mm-hmm. Rome was never built in a day. So we've identified, as Chief said, some of the key source markets. We've also then looked at new opportunities. So we've got adventure, which we spoke about yesterday, and incredibly excited about that particular area. Gastronomy, we're taking golf, not that's the only thing we're going to start on, but in terms of sports tourism and in sports of, that side of things, we're starting with golf and looking at golf tourism, and then we're also looking at the youth segment. I mean, it was spoken about yesterday in terms of the age, and it's an important part of our travel tapestry. So those are some of the sort of new opportunities. So we've basically had the source market meetings. We still have to do India, but some of the stuff that's come out is actually really exciting. So we met on the UK, we've had North America, we've had Germany, but what's come out of that is We've looked at areas where we can identify clear opportunities and start collaborating on, and there are 4 of those I'll just share with you. So the first one really is about, given where we are and given the fact that we have Africa's Travel Ndlovu, and it's our main show, how do we take that to the next level? How do we bring the private sector resources in, working with SAT, to make sure that that becomes the biggest mega fam ever, and that we get operators and we get agents and we get the requisite product people from the source markets, and indeed new operators to Ndlovu. So we put a task team that's going together that's going to be working on that, and really excited about that. The next project really is around training and a knowledge base. So what has happened in COVID in our source markets is there's been a denuding of skilled resources. Things shut down, people had to earn a living, so a lot of people moved back. But as the market comes back, you've got new people in tour operators and agencies overseas that are not skilled on the destination. So we've got a task force there, and SAT's got limited resources in this respect. So here we've got a task force where we're going to put the best brains of the private sector together, and to see how we can help plug that gap and help really have a focused approach on developing and enhancing that knowledge base. And then the third one, what we look for as well, and what we said is, let's look at tactical opportunities if they present themselves. So at the moment, given the exchange rate, we've got an incredible value for money proposition. But we also are thinking a little bit out of the box. We also, and I mean, when you look at Tebe's presentation here, looking at brands and some of the brands, what brands do we have? And one of the most successful South African brands that we have, that has a major footprint, particularly in the UK and also starting in the US, is Nando's. So we picked up the phone to Robbie Brosen and says, can we have a chat? He's incredibly excited about it, and we will be having in the next 2 weeks sitting down and having a meeting with Nando's about, can we put together a campaign that leverages Nando's footprint and goes out with a message about a value for money proposition. Wow. So, and then on the fourth side, I was really privileged to attend a really cool trade show that took place at the end of June, Experience Africa, that SAT puts together with ATA, held at Stamford Bridge in London. Really exciting show. But what came out of us for us in the UK is, it's together with ATA, there's a South African component, but there's a big South and East African component. Is there an opportunity to possibly, just take South Africa and do something different, scale it up, and make that a seminal event where we can scale it, and we can take the 60 products that were there and maybe double that and even triple that. So we're putting a task team together on road shows in source markets as well. So these are just a couple of the issues that come out. But at the same time, what we're also doing is unearthing issues that we think need to be or could be better, just sort of discussed more. So for example, WTM London, should we continue to invest in that? That's a question mark. So these sort of strategic issues start getting unearthed in the process as we go along. And then on the new opportunity side, bearing in mind with the source markets, your point of departure is SA Tourism. They do have game plans, they do have budgets, but where the new opportunities come, this is sort of uncharted territory. So what we're doing here is we're coming together, looking at adventure tourism. The team has met, they've identified 3 key sort of areas, and they're going to put essentially a business plan together that says, how do we market adventure tourism? Because that's the one thing that's been missing up to now.
Well, that's awesome. Speaking about food, did you hear that you said we love our food, right? So we're picking up on that one. Sonto, David has just mentioned adventure and sport. And I know you've kind of like decided that you want to focus on sport as well. Can you just tell us briefly about what you've done in that space and what the plan is?
Yeah, thank you so much. You know, when you talk about the new opportunities, in fact, if we remember the conversation yesterday that we had in the panel that I was actually in, where it was mentioned that we cannot continue to do the same things that we've been doing for years and years and hope for a different result.
True.
That we need new strategies that talk to the new day that we're having currently. So sports tourism has been a thing for a very long time. In fact, it is my personal view that maybe as a country we didn't fully optimize on the World Cup 2010. And perhaps now we have to wake up very late and sort of rejig and rethink our strategy. And when that wave was here with us, we could have sort of done more, but maybe there were other priorities. So where we are at the moment is we're also looking at the traditional marketing approach is not going to take us to the promised land. I made a mention yesterday that, you know, your normal TVC and your radio campaign is not going to take you far. You've got to look very differently at what's going on and see how do you then leverage and capitalize on that. So for us at the moment, the sporting area has presented a tactical opportunity, if I use David's words, and we've got to be to read the room and be part of that wave. Look at what has just happened now with the Netball World Cup in Cape Town. I mean, totally bizarre that nobody has been talking about netball, nobody has understood netball, the rules and whatnot, but it just created such a huge opportunity for South Africa, and luckily we were part of that. But it's then saying, what else can we then do? So we continue to look at those opportunities. In May, when we spoke at the SATSA conference, we presented an opportunity on the BMW sort of golf partnership, the championship, which we have talked to the industry about, and they've been very excited about it. There was an event in Munich, and it was quite encouraging that the trade were actually very ready to sell packages, and they felt very seen in terms of that space, and they really were active in driving the packages. And now the second leg of that is going to Fan Court, and I know that they're continuing to actually build on that momentum of that event that was already hosted in Munich, because we also understand the power of golf as a sport, the spend that it has, the products that those guys are able to actually access, and it is quite lucrative for us. Now, marry onto that the fact that the South African pros, the golfers, they have been doing very well on the tours around the world. So that adds quite a lovely layer for us from a marketing point of view. In fact, it was quite lovely that in Munich, we didn't even see it. But a South African then won, which was just a plus. So we're going to continue to work on the sporting sort of quite of that segment. We know now that we've got the Rugby World Cup that's happening in France. It's a huge opportunity. The South African brand will be on display for quite a prolonged period, and the critical thing becomes, how do we then all leverage on that? So from our side, we're running our global campaign with Siya Kolisi. We're doing some tactical stuff with the rugby, the Springboks, and we've also discussed with the industry in terms of what are the opportunities that presents. And there's been some quite very good good inputs in terms of what we can do within the year that we have open in terms of that particular contract, in terms of content development, content sharing, itineraries in terms of, I know some people have called me, they say they would like to take Sia on a tour, they would like to see what he likes about South Africa, where he would like to go, and he could obviously share that with his community. So there's a lot of good conversations that we are having around sports and what we can do based on how South Africa continues to be a formidable player in sports. So we'll take advantage of that. But just coming back to what David was saying on adventure, it remains one of the critical areas for South Africa in terms of what the destination offers. And it is something that we're going to continue to try and see what else can be done to make sure that South Africa reclaims its position as an adventure destination, because that is going to be quite critical if you look at the trends post-COVID as far as adventure is concerned.
Okay, thank you. CEO, we've heard about the strategic conversations we're having, looking into the future, and the tactical opportunities that we are identifying and taking advantage of as we go along. Now, once we have agreed as a collective about these experiences, how do we decide how we're going to position them, who our audience is, and how do we reach those audiences?
Well, that's the critical part, because we can go and sit down and discuss and debate and put together strategies. If no one is going to consume what we've put together, it's meaningless. So we've got to use all the channels that we have in front of us, to drive the message. Be it the trade channel, be it the media, be it the OTAs, and whomever is available to help us drive the message, it's going to be critical. But on top of it, budget is also critical, because you can't move these messages if you don't have the budget to move it, or if you don't have the people to move the messages. So when all is said and done, and this is what we're looking at, just lightly when we're going through this task team, is the budget. Is there money to execute these things? Because we can have these grand ideas, or what they call champagne taste and with a beer budget. It's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So we all need to look at the budget. What is the amount of money that we have? What are the resources that we have from both public sector and the private sector? Because private sector do spend a lot of money in marketing. How do we make sure that whatever the resources that we have, we're able to utilize them better and penetrate the markets better? So that's going to be critical. So we're going to have to talk about money at some point. Mm-hmm. And where do we get it? Mm-hmm. And we're also going to need to talk about money with government, because as the tourism sector, we contribute a lot of money in terms of the fiscus itself, the GDP and whatnot. But the budget that we get back is not even close to what we contribute to the economy. So at some point, we're going to have that discussion to say, how do we make sure that the budget for tourism is higher? See, when you go out to the market, and this is, when a lot of people think of money outside of tourism, and when you say, you have a 2.5 billion rand budget, just convert it into dollars and pounds. That's the budget that you have to play overseas. And the expectation is high to deliver. But if there is no budget that matches the expectation, it becomes problematic. That's why the issue around budget is going to be quite important. And how do we ensure that when Treasury looks at tourism and looks at allocations, we are looked at differently? So a very, very key point. Of course, from the private sector, we're going to do our part because we still need to market our businesses. We need to make sure that we're visible everywhere, so that we can get more people coming in and we can reap the rewards from that. But that's going to be critical. So we've got to get everyone who can send our message across. We've got to put money behind it. We've got to make sure that all of us are behind it. Because when all of us are behind it, we're able to do more. So that's going to be the critical part. That's going to be the next step after we finish the deliberations. How do we get to the market? What kind of branding and comms do we need to do in those markets? Can we afford it? how much is the money that we have when converted to pounds or dollars. Sometimes we look at the budgets when we're doing this discussion.
True.
And we look at the budget that South African tourism has, and you look at what we can do with the budget. It's not a lot of money in a grand scheme of things if you look at other destinations.
Yeah, with the limited resources, we need to decide, are we alive with possibilities or are we inspiring new ways, right? The last question, how do we collectively channel the messaging, direct the narrative about Destination South Africa so that we reclaim who we are and we all speak the same language? How do we do that as a collective? Because we've got limited resources, we've got things that we've identified that we need to do. Some of them, we might consider them niche market, but they are opportunities. Some of them we might consider mass market. With the limited resources that we have, with the budget that we have, the strategic objectives we want to achieve, and the people who are sitting around here who have the know-how, how do we then take the message so that when we walk out of this room, we all know what it is that we're going to do to position South Africa and take control of the narrative about the destination and how people view the destination. Sonto, can I start with you on that one?
I was encouraged some few weeks ago because the minister has pushed us into one room to talk about how do we collectively market South Africa, which I thought was very powerful because it made us to stop and really challenge ourselves to say, what exactly are we doing? How are we doing it? So in that workshop, we were able to sort of scan the environment very high level to say, what are we doing? But also, what is our competitors doing? Because remember, the challenge that we have is that when I want to go on holiday, I'm not thinking about, South Africa is a developing country, I'm going to go there. I'm thinking about my holiday. Where am I going to go around the world? And I look at all the destinations and I pick from a whole variety. So when we play in market, we have to take that into account. So already the first step has been done from the minister's point of view in leading us into a space that says we've got to stop and look at our messaging. And I'm very encouraged with that, and we're doing a lot of work in trying to with the industry to get to a point that is going to take us to the next level. The second part is to say that if we remember that when we are messaging South Africa, when we are talking about what South Africa is about, it's the whole variety of stakeholders. If you remember, I know Tebe speaks about inspiring new ways against alive with possibility. But this has not been a journey that only South African tourism can do. It becomes a national agenda, and I wasn't part of that process, but I know that it went to cabinet, and then they got to decide. So we've got a complex way of working when it comes to marketing the destination. So at some point, you've got to rally the troops and the leadership and everybody into a point of that single message. So I'm glad the minister is driving it, and I know that it's going to take us to that point where at a national level we can be able to get to the one point. But in the meantime, what do we have to do? We have got to work where we are under the surface, get the basics right, get their products right, get the pricing right, work together because we know we don't have the money, and then the message will, because we can't wait, you can't stop the marketing and then I'm waiting for the messaging. You got to work, and then you got to be fixing the bus whilst it's on the road. So that is what we are doing, and we're not stopping. We're working with the industry. How can we make our rent go further? How do we maximize what we have currently? The rest we're going to continue to work because we've identified what the problem is. We know what the problem is. So we're working on that problem, but the bus must move. It cannot stop.
Thank you. Last word from you, David. We are out of time.
Okay, so
where to from here?
Quickly from my side, I mean, the question you pose is a seminal one, but it's difficult to execute at a macro level. So the most sensible way is to break it down into constituent parts, because the strategy and the messaging that we have to deliver in North America is quite different to what we may have to deliver in India. So that's why the structured engagement allows us a process of stepping back, assisting and refining the SAT game plan going forward. And in this process, we're incredibly sober as the private sector. The work we're doing now, firstly, is an ongoing conversation. So that door's open. This is an ongoing conversation that's going to take place. But that's going to feed into the SAT 2024 plan. And what this process then also allows us to do, and I think that's the beauty of it, when we communicate this back broadly to the private sector, you start really aligning your marketing effort with your sales effort, because that's what the private sector actually delivers on. And I think that's the way to do it. And even in this process, we've started with these 6 markets. As we take it forward, it would be really nice to bring some of the other core markets in, but we're not waiting. And I mean, all credit to the SAT team. Sadiq, who heads up emerging markets, held a webinar with us recently where communicated his plan to the industry, incredibly well received. Abby Jacobs heads up Northern Europe, and we've had webinars on that. And in doing this, there is just greater alignment. The people are hearing what the plans are. They can then make their budgeting decisions as the private sector, and we start aligning behind the message.
Thank you. I'll give you one chance, Sonto. CEO, where to from here? How do we make sure we don't lose momentum on the great work that has been done already? Last word.
Well, we will continue.
Short.
We are not going to stop. And as they say, Mushijo Chwela Pele.
Hallelujah. Sonto?
I just want to throw a challenge to the industry. And the challenge is, what are we going to do with mega events?
Okay.
I'm just going to throw it as a challenge because it's the elephant in the room. We know the impact of events, but we're not there yet in terms of collectively, what are we going to do? I'm throwing it forward to everybody. It's a challenge, and I'm sure David and I will have a nice golf session about it.
We're fortunate enough that we've got key people in the room that are playing a very strategic role in the space. I think what we need to do is to come together as a collective and decide what we're going to do with the mega events, because I know there are people who are doing small things in their own small spaces, and others are doing big things, but it's about us coming together as a collective to say, how do we then take advantage of these events? How do we then use these events to position South Africa as a destination? And how do we work together in the value chain? Because we can't do it on our own. For example, in the hotel space, we need car hire, we need airlift. So it is important that everybody in the tourism value chain works together to make sure that we sell Destination SA. Thank you so much.